This program is made by MPT to enrich the diverse communities throughout our state and is made possible by the generous support of our members. Thank you.
We are just 30 minutes away from the start of the Women's Maryland Cycling Classic, a world-class road race right here in Baltimore. Big crowds are expected throughout the day. The men's race will start at 12:30. Hi, everybody. I'm Jim Hunter. In a moment, we'll go out to the race course and check in with my partner, my racing partner for the day, former professional road racing cyclist Freddie Rodriguez, who is also a world champion rider and an Olympian. But first off, it's a big day, sports day-wise, here on Maryland Public Television. We'll have full coverage of both races from start to finish right here on MPT. Or if you want to watch on your phone, just go to mpt.org/Maryland Cycling Classic and click on the live stream button. The women's race will begin at 8:30. They'll battle for 71 miles, and then the men's race will follow at 12:30. They're going to race for 107 miles. We'll also bring you the award-winning ceremony after each race today. The entire race will take place inside Baltimore city limits. Some of the best women and men cyclists from around the U.S. and around the globe will start the race at Harbor Point and finish a couple of hours later in the Inner Harbor. Okay, let's go out to the race course now and check in with my partner for today, former professional road racing cyclist Fast Freddie Rodriguez, who is a racing champion. First off, Freddie, why the nickname Fast Freddie?
Wow, that's a great story. As a kid growing up in LA, racing around the neighborhoods, I quickly got that nickname from the announcers and quickly developed this idea that I was fast, and I carried it on through my career in the Olympics, at Tour de France, and here we are at the end of my career now, announcing and enjoying not being so fast, but enjoying all these fast riders being out here in Baltimore.
I don't think any of us are as fast as we once were. Now, what are the races going through right now as we get closer to the start?
All the races right now are basically going through their plan, right? You know, getting ready. They have to start eating their calories, taking in their carbohydrates, getting their clothing set up, their bike set up, working with their staff, going through the game plan, how they're going to strategize. This is a really technical course. It's really dynamic, so it's going to be something that they really have to focus on what everybody's role. Everybody has a job here. It's like a team. You have defenders, you have midfielders, you have attackers, and they're right now going through the game plan and getting their game face and getting ready to go out there and perform.
Now, this is the first time for the women's racing in the Maryland Cycling Classic. How big is that for this event?
It's big. I mean, right now, women's racing is growing. We have the Tour de France that's just been elevated to the next level. Our women's program in the U.S. right now, I think we got the most medals, a third most medals from any sport at the last Olympics, and we're hoping for a lot for the next Olympics in LA. So having Baltimore showcase our best women in the world just adds to the volume of the importance of our women's races.
Now, for the first time, the entire race will be held downtown. What does that mean for the cyclist?
Well, it's a transition, you know, because races, you know, that's why we call them classics. They create a tradition, and so we got into this tradition, and we start out in the county and come back in, but the beauty about now having it all downtown is for the fans, they get to see the riders all day long, especially downtown here by the Inner Harbor. You get to see them come out from different directions. It's really dynamic. There's a lot of different things. You know, even the riders, they don't know what's going to happen. We've been questioning them and like, what do you think is going to happen? Who is the contender? Like, it could be a sprint. It could be wild, and it's going to be Hail Marys being thrown all over the place. And that's what makes a bike race really beautiful to watch.
Now, this is the first time for the women's race. Do you have a favorite?
I wouldn't say I have a favorite. I mean, if there's a favorite for us here in Baltimore, is we got Kenna, and she's a local. She grew up here in Kenna Pfeiffer. She grew up here in Baltimore, and she's racing for Team USA. So we should definitely keep an eye on her. She's excited. Her family's here. She knows the roads. You know, she's been riding the roads. And when you have that home turf advantage, it definitely makes you a lot better. I won four of my championships here in the U.S. And when I came home, I definitely rose to the occasion.
Now, because this is all downtown, what is the course like?
The course, like I was saying, is very technical. We got cobblestones, we got climb, we have a lot of sharp corners, which, you know, when you think, this is a peloton, imagine a traffic jam of riders coming through corners, and so you got that acceleration, deceleration, so you have a lot of riders trying to fight for those corners. You want to be at the front, because when you come out of a corner, if you have to slow down, guys going through it are going at 30 miles an hour at the front, and everybody else has to brake. By the time you get to the corner, they're already half a minute up the road, and those dynamics adds up to a lot of waste of energy. So knowing where to be, when to be, is really, really important for bike race. And for me, that's one of the things. You got the cobblestones. You know, they're going to get pinched in. You come into a tight corner. You have to know how to ride your bike through these rough sections, which makes it unstable, but dynamic and exciting for the fans and for the riders, because there's riders who are better at it than others, and they're going to be trying to take advantages at those points.
Now, at the beginning of the race, will it be a sprint, or will the riders conserve their energy?
Well, that's it. You know, usually when you have a race in a city and you start off and you have point to point, they kind of settle in. But because we're starting it in a city, and right away they're going onto the cobblestones, they're going to have to really be dynamic, and somebody could try to take advantage at the beginning. And since it's a new course, a lot of the riders are saying, you know, maybe I can catch people off guard and take an advantage, and they'll never catch me, they'll never see me, I take it all the way home. And it does happen. It doesn't happen as often, but you'll see riders leave early in the race and then never get caught, and the race behind miscalculates when to bring them back, and the cat and mouse happens, and the guy that went early wins the race.
Now, it's interesting because you're talking about strategy here, and I'm sure every rider has a different thought about that strategy.
Exactly, and that's what makes it so beautiful. We have so many teams. This is a team sport, and every team has a different strategy, and you have different riders that have different strategies. So you have a winner, you have a sprinter, you have a climber, you have an all-arounder, and so you have your different cards you can play throughout the race. So when you're out there watching this race, you got to think about who's out there right now and what's their role for their team. They might be a decoy for the sprinter, and they really want to bring this race back together towards the end, so that fast rider could come around the last corner on Pratt Street and take it all. While you have on other teams, like, we don't have a guy that can be the fastest, so we have to animate from the start. You know, when you think about the men's race, EF is thinking like that. EF is one of the top teams in the world, and they have Nielsen Powless, and he's a strong rider, but he's not a fast finisher. So you bet they're going to be out there animating. Little Trek, they're also very similar. They're a very strong team, but they don't have a fast finisher, so they're going to be animating a race, hoping to make it harder for the sprinters.
It looks very pleasant downtown. What's the weather like, and how will that affect the race?
This is actually probably the best for the riders. You know, it's like a little bit like a marathon. If it gets too hot, it becomes really hard to keep your body temperatures down. So we have cooler weather compared to the last couple of years. You know, in 2023, I think we had about up to 100 degrees. So bringing it down to these, you know, right now I think we're in the 70s, 80s. So we're going to have a more relaxed, especially for the women. For the men, we still don't know how the weather's going to be. But just by feeling the forecast right now, we're going to have a little bit of an easier race from temperatures, which would benefit certain riders. The Europeans tend to like this weather, but they're also coming off the Tour de France, where the Tour de France was very hot and the temperatures really high. So a lot of these riders are already adapted to hot weather. Some riders are better than others. So I would say that we're looking at a moderate temperature race.
All right, Freddie, we'll check back in a few moments. Now, a first this year for the Maryland Cycling Classic is the women's event. Here's MPT Sue Copen to explain.
For Maze Wimbush, a rising pro cyclist from Southern Maryland, the addition of a women's race to the Maryland Racing Classic is cause for celebration of progress, passion, and possibilities.
For young girls watching from the sidelines, this race says, you belong here, you can dream big, and there's a path for you in this sport.
Race director Jim Burrell says this is an invitation-only event.
We go and we work with teams around the world, sharing, you know, what Maryland has to offer, what this circuit race has to offer, and the amenities from hotels to ground transportation, just everything that we do to support all of our athletes.
And Mays Winbush says this event is a game changer for women's cycling.
Visibility leads to sponsorships, opportunities, and inspiration for the next generation of racers. The fact that international teams from Europe to Africa are coming here to compete and be seen on the world stage is powerful. It proves this race just isn't about growing locally, it's helping evolve this sport globally.
Both the women's and men's races will start right here at Harbor Point Central Plaza and will end in the Inner Harbor along Pratt Street. The women will make 4 laps, the men 6 of the nearly 18-mile course. The competition manager for the women's race is Joanne Kizanowski, a former professional cyclist originally from New Zealand. She's charged with handling all of the logistics for the women's teams, and that includes checking out the course.
My favorite part of the course would definitely be the Fells Point area with the cobblestones. Yeah, I think like going through those cobbled streets is just really special and something that we don't typically get in the United States. So I think, putting that in really adds, an interesting element, and it's very European.
15 women's teams will be taking part in this year's race. 9 from the United States, 2 from Germany, 2 from Canada, 1 from Benin, and 1 from Mexico. And Kizanowski says the cyclists are looking forward to hitting the streets of Baltimore and seeing and hearing the crowds along the way.
They really love to put on a show. They love to see people on the side of the road. They love to hear the cheering. So, and being able to race, in a city, very technical, a lot of corners, a lot of ups and downs. So there's a lot of features in this course, which make it, really different and dynamic.
While Mays Winbush won't be among the cyclists in this year's event, she's hoping to be a part of it in the future.
Competing in Maryland Cycling Classic is definitely on my list of goals in the future. I would love to participate just because it's like in my backyard. I'm from Waldorf, Maryland, so coming up just to Baltimore and racing at such a high level would be such an awesome opportunity.
And Joanne Kizanowski says she expects this event and women's racing to only continue to grow.
We have a lot of plans, for the future as well. And hopefully we can, build some more races, in the USA, and entice people coming, from over, especially over in Europe, to come over to the USA and race some of these international events that we have.
In Baltimore, I'm Sue Copen.
Now let's head back to the start of the race with Freddie Rodriguez. Freddie, what's happening now? And is this where the jitters appear?
Yeah, I mean, for a lot of riders that are basically new to this race, yeah, a lot of jitters are going to be happening. But like I said, they're going through their game plan. They're sitting with we call them directors, sportives, which is basically a manager or coach, and they're running them through the plan. They're getting their fuel ready. I mean, these riders are going to be drinking so much water and so many carbohydrates. Some of the riders are making over 100 grams an hour of sugar in you think about for that much racing, it's a lot of sugar, but they're burning it, so they need to be prepared. So they're going through all these little steps to get ready for that. So hopefully that's taking the jitters out of their way and focusing on the race, focusing on what they need to get ready for, and hopefully getting excited for an amazing downtown race here in Baltimore, because this stage is going to be very dynamic and very open for a lot of riders to take opportunity.
All right, Freddie, don't go away. We'll be back to you in a moment. Now, the excitement leading up to the race day has been building all week, and we're less than 20 minutes away from the riders this year. Now, the women's Benin national team, it's the first time an African federation will field a female squad for a major race. Here's MPT's Nancy Yamada.
Ce que j'aime dans le vélo, premièrement, en faisant le vélo.
She said that the bike helps her understand herself better, and the bike also enables her to go on different voyages.
Through the help of an interpreter, 2 members of the women's Benin national team are sharing their thoughts about cycling and training in Wyoming in preparation for the Maryland Cycling Classic in Baltimore.
This is the first
time an African women's national team has raced on American soil outside of the World Championships in 2015 in Richmond. So this is groundbreaking.
Kimberly Coates is the CEO of Team Africa Rising, a nonprofit dedicated to African cycling development. She fielded this team from a small country in West Africa in hopes of growing the sport and giving women more access.
I mean, some of the women come from less than ideal means, but they have a cycling federation organization. The president that leads the Benin Cycling Federation is deeply committed to the growth of the sport. The government is starting to invest in the sport, and we as Team Africa Rising just come alongside and kind of, keep the ball rolling. And really our biggest piece of the puzzle is that we provide access, whether that's access to sponsors, access to events such as the Maryland Cycling Classic, training.
Among the many challenges they faced, getting visas and securing flights to come to the U.S., as well as adjusting to the heat and altitude of Wyoming. Beyond that, getting a young team road ready and competitive has been an uphill climb.
In 2020, I don't believe they were even on the Africa Tour rankings, and now they're 11th. For this particular race and the World Championships that follow right behind it, is that we just want them to finish the race. They're not going to medal, they're not going to podium, but they're here. And they've earned the place. They've earned the right to be here.
This opportunity on the world stage is not lost on the athletes who told me they are nervous, but excited and hope to inspire others.
She said that they need more women in the sport to get encouraged also, that they can do it, and that they need support from everyone.
I think exposure for these women is so critical. I hope that these women rock up and other, girls of color in Baltimore see them going, bingo, I can do this.
I'm Nancy Yamada.
Now, the Maryland Cycling Classic is more than just the two races. It's about community and how cycling can be part of it, as MPT's Charles Robinson tells us.
The 4th through 5th graders at the Creative City Charter School were prepared for a bike giveaway.
The smiles on their face, the mouth-dropping moment. You remember when you got your first bike. I remember when I got my first bike. It was the emotional, like you won the Super Bowl day.
It's amazing that you guys would do this for these children. Sometimes the city children are overlooked, and I feel like it's a great opportunity for them. Some of them do not know how to ride bikes, and it's a great opportunity for the school to have bikes for them to learn that. I don't know that a lot of schools have that opportunity.
It's a great way to get good exercise, to get out there, get fresh air, explore the communities that you live in, and then just really partner with your friends and your family for a great activity.
But the first thing is to learn what comes with owning a bike.
We are very, very proud to have the Maryland Cycling Classic here in the community program to talk to you not only about cycling, to also promote the race that's going to be happening on September 6th, but also to be telling you about bicycle safety.
We head over to the Towanda Recreation Center. Inside the gym, an obstacle course. The kids don the helmets.
Okay, move on.
That looks like it fits perfectly. Does it feel comfortable?
Some on the course need assistance, while others mastered the obstacles.
I learned how to ride a bike when I was 3, and I learned with my dad. I used to ride in trails, parks. To get a new bike, it was exciting, and it was very fun, and I got to ride it every day. I feel like it's a little bit high, but I think I've gotten used to it. So now since I've like ridden it for a little while, it's easier than it was when I was first beginning.
It's not every day that a Baltimore City public charter school gets a chance to learn how to ride bikes. But how about this? They're going to take one of these bikes home with them.
Personally, I don't know how to ride a bike, and for the school to have a program that will teach my child to ride a bike, that's amazing, because they're filling the gap where I know I'm ashamed that I cannot ride a bike myself, but I'm happy that they'll be able to do that for my child.
These are life skills which will translate into potential opportunities. I'm Charles Robinson.
Let's head back to the race course now and bring in my partner, Freddie Rodriguez, who has a guest.
I'm here with Roy Nickman, an '84 Olympian gold medal, actually bronze medalist in team time trial. Actually, my national team coach back in the day. But here he is now as one of the duties of an ex-professional. Sometimes we get hired to drive the cars because we have the skills to understand how these riders are going to go through the corners. So he's driving one of the medical cars. So Roy, tell us a little bit about what that means to be here at the race and to do that kind of work.
Well, first of all, it's great to be here at the race and see that they brought UCI race international competitors back to the U.S. The amount of effort and resources that the city has put into this is phenomenal. So it's really exciting to see because we haven't had a lot of that in the U.S. And being in the race, one of the other things I did was I drove a fire engine for 15 years. And so, I was asked to come here because I have experience and skills to do this safely. And yeah, there's a need to be awareness. We've got pedestrians, we've got cyclists coming and going and people crashing, and we'll be stopping for that. It's a bit of a challenge, but it's also really exciting to be part of it and to know that I can do it, reasonably safely, as safely as one can do it.
So you guys will be following behind the race, and as the riders need help, medical help, you guys will be pulling over and supporting them?
We'll be pulling over, and at times we won't even be pulling over. They'll be hanging on the car, and they may be getting patched up to be staying within the range of the race, so they don't have to chase back on, so they'll allow that in the rules. But yeah, if there's something massive, we're the first ones there, and doctors jump out and handle things.
Wow, that's good. I remember those days having to hold on to the car after a crash, trying to get bandaged up, trying to put medicine on the cuts and everything. Some of the times you're going through difficult corners. I mean, imagine having to come in through the cobblestones and having to grab onto the car or something like that. You let go at the right moment so you don't crash. Tell us a little bit about your history. You have a long history in cycling. You've developed some of the best riders in the world now. That are one of the riders is here racing. You can tell us a little bit about him and who he is and how you've probably helped him get to this level.
Yeah, I got into the sport at 16 years old as a resident athlete at the Olympic Training Center, had tremendous opportunity and made something of it. And I really think my legacy had nothing to do with what I performance, but we had this junior team the last 10 years, and Quinn Simmons is from it, and Brandon McNulty, and Matthew Riccatello is in the top 10 at the Tour of Spain, and Luke Lamperti, all of these riders. So for me, being able to engineer that and put that together and just be a little piece of those guys' progression has been really cool, really rewarding. So it's going to be exciting to watch Quinn race today. And his brother, Colby, going to try to mess with him a little bit and see if he can outdo the big brother superstar.
So you're like a dad. I mean, basically, you're here supporting your riders. You saw them. You know their capabilities, and now you're following the race. But you're emotionally engaged with them, and it's going to be really exciting to see how they do. And having that brother fight, they just did it at the national championships and won one last year. Now Quinn won this year. Tell me a little bit more about their history and what they are as riders, because we're going to see them competing today.
Well, I think, Quinn has really found his rhythm this year, and it's great to see, injury and overtraining and tragedy. He's come together. Colby's always been the level head and just slowly getting better and better, but they have a great relationship. Quinn has been a great brother to Colby. Colby's supportive of Quinn, so it is a rivalry with a smile. That's really all I can say about it. It's fun. I talked to Colby for a while yesterday.
That's great. Do you know anything about the women's race and any of the riders? Do you have any contact with the riders at how they're going to do?
The only rider Cassidy was on our team, and she's having a great year with CCB and national team, so I talked to her, and it's going to be exciting to see what she can do, and a few of the other riders that I know. But yeah, our legacy was more the men's team. We did a women's team late in the time period of the cycling team, so I just don't have that many athletes out there. Didn't have time to work that side.
That's like, well, as a professional athlete, an ex-professional athlete, we wear multiple hats. He's a coach, he's a director, he's a driver. We try to basically do all these little jobs that kind of relate to each other. So, I mean, I'm excited to hear, what do you think is going to happen today? I mean, these races are so dynamic.
Right. I really can't predict because they are so dynamic. And you don't know who's going to have the legs, who's going to really have their head in it. I don't know. That's what makes it exciting to come to the bike race.
I mean, we hear stories like Lidl Trek with Quinn. They're saying they're going to make, no matter what, they're going to make this race really hard. So they're here to perform, and I think they don't have somebody that's really fast. So they're looking, EF is in the same book, so they're also going to be trying to animate this race. It's like maybe Matthews is ready to come into the field. So we don't know who's going to do this race, how they're going to do this race, but the heat's going to start adding up. The cobblestones are going to add up. The climbs are going to add up. The corners are going to add up. We really don't know, but is there one rider that you think might have a chance of winning this race?
I'm still going to put my money on Quinn because he wants this. We'll see if I'm right. If he's carried his form. I mean, it was unbelievable watching him at the Tour this year. Just day after day, he had the legs. And now I believe he's a believer.
You can tell from the press conference he was really in tune with his comments and how he wanted to race, how he raced at the Tour de France. He is our U.S. professional champion, so he's wearing the Stars and Stripes, which is the flag, and so he's very proud of that. And he's here to perform. It's the only top-level race in America right now. So to do that as a young rider with the jersey is going to be something amazing.
Freddie, you've been in so many events like this throughout your career. What are your memories of what an event like this means to the community?
Can you repeat the question? It's really loud here on the course now. They're going live here, so.
Well, I mentioned that you've been in so many of these events in your career. What does an event like this mean for the community?
Sorry, it's so loud here we can't hear you. So,
what are the team members doing at this point?
All right. What does this mean to the community? Of Baltimore to have this race here.
My understanding is the community is super excited. There's a cycling community, but this is, a city that my understanding is they're trying to revitalize, bring things into, and it's something to be proud of. So I think a lot of the community is really behind this and excited to see this happen.
That's great. I mean, from my perspective, Baltimore was the original U.S. Pro Championships back in the day, so they have a history of the sport, and they have a legacy of a lot of strong sports, and the community, the sports commissioners, they're excited to have everybody here, have so many strong riders. We have riders from around the world, 20 countries are here, national champions, Olympians, Tour de France riders, so we're really excited to see what is going to happen today, and I see this classic turning into a monument some year.
All right, Freddie, thank you very much. We'll be back with you later on in the program. Now, keep it right here for all the cycling excitement today.
I gotta go.
The start of the women's race is just a couple of minutes away. We'll see you at the finish line and then stay here after the men's race for the premiere of the 45th season of MPT's Motor Week. You don't want to miss it. Thanks for watching the MPT Sports Desk. We'll see you in a bit.
Your hometown favorite, a former speed skating and inline star, this 20-year-old grew up right here in Baltimore. Let's give her a huge welcome to the start line. Ladies and gentlemen, it's Kenna Pfeiffer, hometown hero. We'll now call the rest of our field to the line.
Yeah, okay.
And if you would please rise if possible.
It's the 2025 Maryland Cycling Classic, America's biggest professional bike race. And the women's event is just moments away, kicking off from Baltimore's historic Inner Harbor. A cloudy and warm day on the eastern seaboard as we bring you to the gorgeous Inner Harbor of Baltimore, Maryland for the third edition of the prestigious Maryland Cycling Classic. This will be the finish line for both the women's and the men's race coming up later on today. It is the most substantial single day of racing we have in the U.S. every year. The biggest race, the grandest events, and all of the top women and men are in the field here today. And this is a shot of what will be the live start for this women's race. And we are coming up on the kickoff here shortly. Steve Schlanger, along with the former Canadian professional Lex Albrecht. Glad to have you aboard.
Thanks, Steve. It's so great to be here. We are about to witness the first ever Women's Maryland Cycling Classic unfold right in front of our eyes. And it's right downtown Baltimore. So it's a pretty big deal for a metropolis like Baltimore to shut down its city center streets like this. And you know what? They do it because they know it's worth it.
This is Harbor Point's Central Plaza, adjacent to the Harbor East District.
On the start line here, we have Lauren Stevens. She's a multinational champion of the United States of America. We have riders from Benin coming all the way from Africa. We have Allison Jackson, the winner of the Paris-Roubaix. She's wearing the colors of the Canadian national champion. We have teams from Simiska Cycling, Virginia Blue Ridge 2028. We have riders from over 20 countries here on American soil racing at the top level of the sport. So we've got national champions, Olympic medalists, and even world record holders in this field.
Just under 100 riders in this women's field. And now let's send you out to the third member of our crew on the course, the former national criterium champion, Rasan Bahati. Hey, Rasan.
I am here in Harbor Point in downtown Baltimore for the inaugural women's race here at the Maryland Cycling Classic. Cloudy conditions today, and it's going to last for the first few hours. So I think these women are going to have the best conditions under the weather today. The highs are in the upper 80s and low humidity. So it's going to be a fast and exciting race.
Only the strong will survive to the finish line here today.
Baltimore, Maryland, and this Inner Harbor has been renovated over the years. It is now such a spectacular setting for sports, for commerce, for culture. This is a big gathering place. It's made Baltimore a wonderful community here surrounding the water. And again, we are right back in the middle of the Central Plaza in Harbor Point. And now about to commence with this first ever women's event. It'll be the third edition of the men's event following later on this afternoon, but this is the inaugural women's race here at the Maryland Cycling Classic.
This is a big deal for women's cycling. We have riders from all over the world, and they're coming many of them for the first time in America, and they're chasing very valuable UCI points, and it's also one of the later races in the season, so this is a last chance for them to show their colors and show their stuff before perhaps signing a new contract for next year.
15 teams, 6 riders per team, just under 100 riders total from 20 different countries. gathering here in Baltimore.
We have riders from New Zealand, from Australia. We have riders from Benin in Africa, all over Europe. We have riders from Canada and, of course, United States. We also have a Mexican team coming in just off the tour of Guatemala, so they've been traveling quite a bit. So just to say, these riders have been traveling very far just to make it to Maryland.
10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, andiamo! Come on, ladies, let's go! Let's go! It is on like Donkey Kong here in Baltimore. All right.
And now out onto the first of 4 laps of an 18-mile circuit. It'll be 72 miles in total for this women's race that will take them to the north and back down south to the finish here in the Inner Harbor. The actual finish of the race is a little more than a half a mile from where they just started. So it starts and ends in roughly the same area of the Inner Harbor, right in the middle of Baltimore. But in between, Lex, it is going to be a very demanding course, including this section of cobbles right near the beginning.
Yeah, this is going to be an exciting section of the race, and right now the riders are just rolling out in the neutral start, so the race isn't actually on. They're following the Commissaire motos. But even though the action is calm, I think that behind those sunglasses and helmets, there's a lot going on in their minds. Nerve, strategy, and maybe a little bit of excitement too. And this is their first taste of navigating these cobbles in the race. So it's kind of nice that they can do it at a relatively slower pace. Oh, we see one of the Benin riders. She may have dropped her chain.
The Benin team coming over from West Africa, Aria Mundi. And now getting back set, and that's what the cobbles can do.
It's true, and there aren't a lot of opportunities to practice racing and riding on cobbles. So this is a good chance for some riders to gain experience, but also it's race day, so those that already have a lot of experience in the bank, they might be able to shine and show their stuff and have an advantage coming through this section on the 4 times that the race will go through the cobbles.
And this is the Fells Point area. That was just about 500 yards of cobbles that they had to deal with. Now the Fells Point area that includes a lot of shops and restaurants, art galleries, and again, they are heading out to the north here. In the first 2 editions of this race that were both men's races, this is an event that was held largely in Baltimore County, out in the countryside with a lot of rolling hills, and then it had the finish here in central Baltimore. But this year, it's a totally different course. The only thing that is carried over and that is the same is the actual finish, a flat run-in down Pratt Street. But other than that, it's entirely in the city of Baltimore, so it makes it much more spectator-friendly. It provides some different competitive dynamics. We will see some climbing. We've already seen some cobbles. We'll see some rollers and also some technical corners too.
Yeah, there's a lot of turns in this course, and that can really change the dynamics of the race. It can make it quite exciting, and it can also be quite taxing on the racers. So those that are going to be able to navigate the corners and the turns efficiently will save a lot of energy, and those that don't so much, well, we might not even see them at the end. So there's a lot of strategy in terms of how this course in and of itself is ridden, and not just what the racers are doing.
All right, well, let's take you through the course map for this Maryland Cycling Classic as we get things underway here, heading out from the Inner Harbor. And again, it's an 18-mile circuit, 72 miles total for the women.
So we have an awesome field here, and I'm looking forward to seeing how they're going to play out this course and navigating all of these different Baltimore neighborhoods. We have some pretty wide open streets that sometimes narrow down quite suddenly, some sharper turns. We're going to be navigating through the course and up to the QOM, so the Queen of the Mountains. So on each of the lines across the QOM, riders will be scoring 4, 2, and 1 points, battling for that title and the prize money that comes with it. Then they'll be speeding back down into town, back into a technical finish. So there are 4 turns into the sprint line. The second time across the sprint line, riders will be going for sprint points, and they'll be awarded points on the second lap, the third lap, and then again at the finish lap.
So the only time that there is not an opportunity to sprint for points will be at the end of the first lap, but then every other lap when they come back across that finish line, they will be sprinting for points. So essentially what that means is there are several different prizes up for grabs. Not only the winner of the race, but you also have the Queen of the Mountains jersey and the sprint jersey that these athletes will have on their radar here today.
This is exciting for the riders because it gives them a chance to go for something that's almost as special as the win, and it gives them a chance to shine if they're maybe not going for the win itself. It also shuffles up the race dynamic in the middle of the race because it's almost as if there are a couple of little races going on within the bigger race, and the rest of the peloton isn't immune to the action that's being taken by the riders who are going for the QOM, Queen of the Mountain, and the sprint jerseys. So they're going to have to react. Sometimes these little intermediate races are what create splits in the race, and they're just exciting to watch and fun to go for as a rider.
All right, so we are underway. The first ever edition of the women's event at the Maryland Cycling Classic, and the first of 4 laps around Baltimore and just south of 70 miles left to go on the day.
Steve, I'm excited to see what happens today. Steve, I'm really excited to see what happens today because we have quite an interesting field. There are some riders in this pack that are kind of flying under the radar. So we have riders that are riding under jerseys that they don't typically wear when they're racing over in Europe or abroad. One rider to look out for that the other peers in the peloton might not have on their radar is Bryony Botha. So she's on the Fearless Femme team, and she's from New Zealand. She has a world record on the track and 2 Olympic medals, but it's her first time, or first year, I should say, racing on the road. So she's a real powerhouse that maybe some of the other riders, especially the European riders, might not yet know about.
Lex, what type of race do you expect overall when you consider the different styles of racing that we see throughout the year, whether it's some kind of a stage race, whether it's a criterium, some kind of a classic? What do you expect from this race in terms of how it should unfold today?
Well, Steve, this is a one-day race, so as opposed to a stage race, the riders don't have anything to save or anything to lose by putting it all out there on the road. So we're going to see a lot of action today. And as I mentioned earlier in the broadcast, there are a lot of riders who are here really to take an opportunity to shine at the end of the season. So just like this rider we see out at the front right now, right at the very beginning of the race, taking a flyer out the front, we're going to see a lot of people instigating action. So it's going to be quite an exciting race. I think we might see the field shatter too at some point.
One rider going off the front on the first of 4 laps here in the inaugural women's edition at the Maryland Cycling Classic. This is at the tail end of the main field, now just a few seconds behind. Is this the kind of a move you would have expected so soon, Lex? And are you kind of surprised that no one else is going with her?
I'm not too surprised that she's out there all alone just because this is so early in the race. The peloton looks pretty calm. She might be a rider who's not marked, but you do notice those stripes on her arm, and that means that she is a former national champion. So I wouldn't necessarily mess around, but because she's alone and because it's so early in the race, I don't think that she's necessarily a threat. What she's doing right now is trying to put a little bit of pressure on the field, or maybe testing out the field too, to see who's going to come after her. And then once the field decides that maybe she's a threat, if they do, then they'll start putting on the gas and either trying to reel her back or sending a couple riders over to meet her in the break and establish a more solid gap. But cycling really is a numbers game, and to be off the front so early in the race all alone isn't necessarily a sign that she's going to be in contention for the win.
That is Odette Lynch, the Aussie for the Fearless Femme Racing Squad.
So Fearless Femme, this is a team. This is Emma Langley, actually. So Emma Langley is a very strong rider. So she could manage to stay away quite a bit, but I do know that her team has plans to really make the race, put pressure on right from the get-go. That's what they were telling me. Lauren Stevens, their captain, multinational champion, Pan Am champion, and the leader of this team. She told me that those are the team's ambitions. So Emma Langley is executing the team strategy perfectly right now. She's got her teammates sitting in the back of the pack, just taking it easy. And I mean, hey, if a miracle happens and she stays away, perfect for the team. If this puts pressure onto other teams to chase, then that's just as good for them, because Emma's forcing them to spend their energy and burn a few matches.
Now single file here at the back end, and that's usually a sign that the pace is pretty heavy.
So Emma Langley is actually looking pretty strong. And you know what? She's actually coming off of a victory in Vermont, the Green Mountain Stage Race. So she's pretty strong right now. And she might be flying under the radar, too, under this team's colors, under Aegis Cycling Foundation. People might be more used to seeing her in the EF colors, the pink jersey. She switched teams, though. So she's showing her stuff out here and getting a lot of TV time and actually creating a gap that's quite surprising to have so early on in the race.
All right, let's take you through some of the teams and riders in this race today and some of the names to look for as the morning unfolds.
We have Ricarda Bauernfeld from Germany. Neve Bradbury, she actually won the Zwift Academy in 2020. Tiff Cromwell, she's been in the sport for many years. She's excellent not only on the road but also in gravel. Agnieszka Skalanek-Sokoja, she's from Poland. She's a little powerhouse of the team. We have Saradazit. This is a German team on the Women's World Tour. Mylene de Zoot, she is an excellent sprinter. Danique Hengeveld as well. Marta Jakaluska, she has a good power and a good punch too. So this team is definitely one to be watching out for. And EF Education, Veronica Ewers, the American cycling star. Allison Jackson, the current Canadian national champion, and she has also won the Paris-Roubaix, so she's a big fan of the cobbles and is going to love the cobble sections here. Clara Amond, a younger Canadian rider, too, on EF. On Siniska Cycling, we have Chloe Patrick, Quiva O'Brien. She was second in the Irish National Champions.
And now the riders are going through Monument Park, back onto a brief section of cobbles. The first ever monument to George Washington is located here. This is a very historic area that is continuing to trend slightly uphill. This entire first section of the lap, where they're heading south to north to reach the furthest part north on the course. It's just a slow drag uphill for the most part. Nothing too serious until you get to the signature climb at the far north end, but then they'll make the turn and head back down south, and it's largely downhill the rest of the way back towards the end of the lap.
It's nice to see that everybody navigated those cobbles safely, because I know that there was a little bit of concern from some of the riders that they were a little bit quote-unquote sketchy, but it seems like in the race environment they're not so bad after all, but they do add another element of excitement. So we see the peloton stretching out now, so there are some riders up at the front leading the chase. Some riders at the back too, getting a little bit strung off. They're not suffering. They're not in trouble though. Just kind of taking it chill, taking it relaxed. At this point, people are just trying to stay calm and save just as much physical energy as they're trying to save emotional and psychological energy, because it's funny, that actually can drain you.
Yeah, you spend a lot of time stressing during the course of a race, don't you? Everybody thinks about the physical toll, but when you consider tactics, your teammates, your opposition, where everybody is in the race, there's a lot that's going on in your head.
Absolutely. And sometimes when the riders are a little bit anxious, they're going to be battling for positions at the front of the peloton when it might not actually be necessary to fight for those little position moves to get up closer to the front. I mean, at a point in the race like this, it's typically pretty okay to sit a little bit further back in the draft and save some energy.
All right, let's continue working through some of the top names.
We have Virginia's Blue Ridge 2028 team. This has been a team that has produced a lot of American Olympians. Kristen Armstrong, actually a gold medal Olympian, multi-gold medal Olympian, was behind this team for some time. There's the Mexican Sofia Arreola. She is an amazing track rider. Marlise Garcia, she is a very good sprinter as well. So this is definitely going to be a team to keep an eye out for. We have the Aegis Cycling Foundation, so we just saw Emma Langley off the front. She's very strong, former U.S. national champion. Lauren Stevens as well, multi-U.S. national champion, who also has a multi-surface program going on right now. She's doing a lot of amazing stuff out on the gravel. And we have some younger riders too, Kylie Hanel, Galen Ballard, Cara O'Neill, and Melissa Rollins. CCB, powered by Levine Law Group. We have Cassidy Hickey, Elizabeth Gonzalez, Sabrina Hayes, Ella Brenneman, Georgia Bond, and Catherine Rush on this team. This is a more local team, an American team, so the Europeans aren't necessarily used to this roster or seeing these riders. They're not quite sure what to expect, so this is going to add to some of the excitement and the element of unknown in the peloton amongst the riders. So we're glad to have them here. Fearless Femme Racing by PB Robert Tett. This is where Brian Ibatha is racing for. She's from New Zealand. She holds a world record on the track. We have Odette Lynch, Paula Grandin, Erica Wierski, and Emily Newsome. Emily Newsome has been racing for quite some time. She's a powerhouse on the road and the track. Bounce Cycling Guild. This is another pretty interesting organization that aims to develop riders, and they do an excellent job at that. Andrea Sear, she's actually a doctor, believe it or not, a doctor and a pro cyclist. Elizabeth Dixon, we have Minori Minagawa, Andrea Boutine, and Alexi Snover.
It's not uncommon to find some of these riders who have other occupations, and they kind of double as cyclists too.
You're right, Steve. You'd probably be surprised at the extent of which these riders have had success off the bike. Legion of Los Angeles is here, and the Benin national team. They're coming all the way from West Africa. This is a huge deal. It is the first time that a team has come all the way from Africa to race a UCI event on American soil. This is really exciting for these riders. They're having the opportunity to race at a brand new level and in a brand new place. Milton Revolution Racing. This is a development team from Canada. Another really awesome opportunity for Canadian young riders to have the chance to race at the international level and be in the mix with the international field. Paddle Bike BMC. This is a team from Mexico. They just came back from Guatemala, where they won the Team GC in the Tour of Guatemala. Very strong roster here. And the U.S. national team. Kenneth Pfeiffer, Mia Asseltine, Carolyn Rezin, Aria Mundi, and Jamie Chapman. I had the chance to speak with some of them yesterday. They're very excited to be here and fly the American colors in front of the home crowds in Baltimore. And finally, we have Cycling Racing. Annie Scott, Emily Dreicher, Skylar Gausward, Julie Lacourcière, Whitney Surgener, and Raylan Stroud up from Canada.
So we now have another rider who is attacking off the front here.
So this is a rider from Fearless Femmes. This is Emily Newsome. Emily Newsome, talk about riders with an interesting background. She actually has a master's in piano music, so she's very multi-talented. She shines quite a bit on the gravel scene. She is a former member of the EF pro cycling team, and now she's racing as a part of Fearless Femmes. So Emily is a time trial and breakaway specialist, so it doesn't surprise me to see her off the front and away from the field right now. She is actually quite a strong threat, and if she can get some riders working with her, she is one of the athletes in this peloton that could stay away.
And checking over her shoulder to see just how far back the rest of the group is, what kind of gap she may be developing. This is always that early portion of the race where everyone tries to take inventory and take the temperature of the other riders to see what kind of form they're in. And apparently we do have a rider down on the course. And let's try to take you back and show you exactly what happened a moment ago. Watch on the left, yeah, under the tree.
So that's another rider from the Fearless Femme team. Not sure what happened there. She might have clipped the pedal going over a little bit too close to the curb. It's tough to tell. But so her teammates off the front, and this is just a smaller squad. They only have 4 riders with them today. So that's unfortunate because that takes, well, hopefully it doesn't take that rider out of the mix. Hopefully she'll be able to get back into the peloton. We'll have to see. But everybody's looking pretty calm right now. The legs are spinning. Nobody seems like they're in too much of a hurry to organize a chase to bring anybody back. It's pretty good for Emily out at the front, you know. Even though the peloton doesn't seem like they're too stressed out, I know that Emily will be putting in a good effort and a good dig to stay away. And she's the type of person who is very strong. She's got a lot of perseverance and persistence as well. So let's see what happens here.
And now back to the very front here. And while we have a moment, let's dive a little bit deeper into the Benin women's national team that traveled a long way to get to this race, further than anybody else by far, coming all the way from West Africa. The former French West African nation became a democratic republic back in 1961. Its national team is the first African women's team to compete here in North America. 4 young riders making the trip here, with their current national under-23 and elite riders leading the team. The head coach, Adrian Nianshuti, bringing Jose and Metevi along with him and the others. And this is an opportunity for them to compete in a high-level race. As you see, the head coach, Nianshuti, is a tremendous story just himself. Survived the Rwandan genocide, lost 60 family members, including 6 brothers, during the course of that. And all part of this Team Africa Racing, which was launched back in 2007 as Team Rwanda. They focused on growing the sport of cycling in Rwanda, expanding to 7 countries in West Africa, and empowering women's cycling with opportunities in training and racing. And now looking ahead to the next Cycling World Championships later this month that will be held in Rwanda, the first ever Worlds in Africa. So this is a high watermark in the sport for African cycling and for this Benin women's team racing at this prestigious event here in Baltimore today. What an opportunity for them, and how great it is for the sport.
Oh, this is awesome for the sport of cycling. It's more and more international. It's part of the reason why it's so awesome to have a race of this caliber in the United States. So cycling is not just concentrated within Europe anymore. We're seeing it continue to grow again in North America. And then to have it also grow in Africa is absolutely amazing. And I'm so glad to see these riders from Benin have the opportunity to race here today, because when I think back to my starts in cycling, those first races that I had where I was racing against and with an international peloton really set the tone for me in my mind about what I could dream and aspire to.
All right, still on the first of 4 laps here in this women's race at the Maryland Cycling Classic, with just over 60 miles left to go. Slightly uphill, but nothing too difficult. It's interesting, Lex, in a race like this, there's a lot of different ways to skin a cat. A lot of different dynamics that could play out, strategies to employ. If you were managing one of these teams, what would be your set of tactics?
Savoring the moment and the monumental. When it's time to get down, we're off to block after historic block. Here, every anthem is more than words. It's a point of pride, one we're eager to share. But you won't get it till you get here.
For inviting you to explore here, there, and everywhere. For giving your sense of adventure the attention it deserves. You're welcome.
And you're welcome to come see all that Maryland has to offer. This is Governor Wes Moore inviting you to come explore and experience Maryland's byways.
MPT is proud to present our 6th annual HBCU Week. Join us as we celebrate historically Black colleges and universities and the premiere of Becoming Thurgood, America's Social Architect.
It was like he had dropped from heaven.
Whatever was going on, people said, don't worry, Thurgood's coming.
Hear the undertold stories of sacrifice, courage, and hope. It all begins Monday, September 8th, only on MPT.
We've been racing into your living room since 1981. Now it's time for Motor Week's 45th anniversary season. Slide behind the wheel of the here and now with our expert car buying and car care advice. Plus a fun look in the rear view mirror.
And now the riders freshening the pace somewhat on this climb. Here's Newsom at the front. And again, the average grade of this is just about 7%, just inside of 200 feet and half a mile. Not the steepest climb you will ever see, but you can see that it has really started to take somewhat of a toll. And this is where they are now on the course. You see at the bottom of the screen, that's where we started and where the lap will end. And now this is the furthest north they will go on this circuit of 18 miles. So this is as far north as you get. Queen of the Mountain Point coming up. And again, the Queen of the Mountains points will go 3 places deep. 4 points for the first one across, 2 points for second, 1 point for third, and a Queen of the Mountains jersey awarded at the end of the race.
So it looks like Emily Newsom here off the front is going to pull full Queen of the Mountains points here. She'll get all 4 of them if she does maintain that gap going across the line. Let's see, though, if the peloton swallows her up before they get to that line. Oh, it looks like they're pulling Emily back, so I wouldn't be surprised to see if Emily has a teammate who will try to jump out of the pack and go for those points.
And now someone attacking for the Queen of the Mountains points.
We have a rider from EF Education Oatly going for the Queen of the Mountains points, and we have Lauren Stevens from Aegis Cycling on her, almost on her wheel. And then we also have a rider from Canyon SRAM taking, looks like she's taking 3rd place there.
Allison Jackson, the multi-time U.S. national champion. And so those are the 3 riders that will take the points, 4, 2, and 1. And they will do this 3 more times. Again, this is the first of 4 laps. So you're hitting the high point of the course. And now as they make this turn, it's slowly, gradually downhill, falls flat at the top, but then now as you go north to south, back down towards the Inner Harbor, back towards central Baltimore, where the race started a little while ago, it's gradually downhill. So something to watch out for as we get later into the race, just how fast this portion of the course will be as they gear up for the finish. And single file here, which is pretty typical after you go over the Queen of the Mountains. And the pace is high already. Riders tend to keep going, or the ones at the front try to stay on the pedals as much as possible, string out the field.
We could see some little gaps opening up in the pack, which is pretty typical on a downhill right after a Queen of the Mountains sprint, because if you cross the line towards the back of the pack and the front of the peloton is already racing downhill, you have to do a little bit of catching up, and to catch up and bridge the gap when the speeds are high is difficult for many reasons, and one of them is because of aerodynamics and just physics. The faster you're going, the more important aerodynamics are, and sitting in the draft to save energy energy. So a group that's riding together, they can go much, much faster downhill. And if you're out and have a gap between you and the riders in front, you're going to have to work much harder to close that gap than you would out on the flats.
So we have had 2 individual riders off the front so far on this first lap. Both have been caught. The field is together. Just south of 60 miles left to go overall, but this is still the first of 4 laps of an 18-mile course.
I think it's pretty normal to see that the riders didn't stay off the front. I think that teams are just testing the waters here, checking out how the rest of the peloton is going to react. It looks like most of the riders are pretty calm. There's not really a sense of urgency or anybody that's trying super hard to initiate a break that will stick, which is pretty normal because it's still pretty early on in the race. I expect to see the more serious attacks happen maybe on the second and especially the third lap.
Going through a very beautiful leafy neighborhood here with historic homes, and again the course changed from years past when the men were exclusively racing here at the Maryland Cycling Classic. Baltimore is such a city of great neighborhoods overall, and the race organizers this year wanted to highlight the famous and beautiful waterfronts that will host both the start and the finish for the women and men, but also giving them the opportunity to illustrate the story of the city's rich history, blending the old, the new of one of America's most diverse cities overall. And so you see so much of that here on every lap. And with this circuit, you see the historic homes, you see the tree-lined avenues, you see the shops, the restaurants, the water. So much on display here, like a postcard of Baltimore and the Eastern Seaboard here in 2025.
And it looks like now we have a rider from Canyon SRAM off the front, so they've decided that they need to put a little bit more spice into the action right now. Let's see how the peloton reacts. I think a few Fearless Femme riders are heading up towards the front to make sure that if this gets serious, they're going to have the opportunity to jump across. So she's got a good little gap up there, that's for sure. Let's see what everybody chooses to do.
So Henrietta Christie, Melissa Rollins, and Andrea Fragoso got the points at the Queen of the Mountains. And that was just a short time ago. Again, the high point of the course.
Okay, and this is actually a Siniska rider off the front right now. This is Kayla Davis who's off the front. A young rider, very strong. So this is Siniska trying to put things in the mix. Oh no, we have another rider down, a couple riders down. Not sure what happened here. A young rider from the Milton Revolution team and another rider from the Font team.
So second and third riders of the day that we've seen crash. And it happened right in the middle of the road.
I wonder if she hit something in the road there because the asphalt isn't super smooth. It's what I like to call pavement with character. So.
Dylan Baker was the rider who went down first there in the red and black.
Oh, shoot. That looks like it hurt. And then the bikes are tangled up there. You're going to see the team mechanics come out. We have some neutral support motor rider. They're helping. And then the team mechanics getting the riders back on their bikes. Let's see if she can get back on there quick enough to jump in the draft of the car and get brought back to the peloton.
So Dylan Baker here still waiting to get back on her bike, part of an all-Canadian team. 6 Canadian riders on this Milton squad. And now this is the action off the front. Again, one rider attacking here on this downhill section. So the third rider who's made a move off the front. We haven't seen a group form yet. We've seen 3 individual solo efforts, but no group has made its way towards the front with any kind of gap to the peloton. And you mentioned the pavement. It is imperfect in a lot of sections, but that's not unusual to cycling. No matter where you go in the U.S., Europe, the rest of the world, you're not going to find perfect pavement except in sections. So it's something these riders typically deal with all the time. And I mentioned earlier that there's 20 different countries represented in this race today. Check out where they've all come from. It is a global sport, drawing riders in from around the planets, and they've all descended on Baltimore, Maryland here today for this one-day event, the first ever women's edition of the Maryland Cycling Classic. The men's race will have their third edition coming up later on this afternoon.
Yeah, I was actually talking to Brendan Quirk, the CEO of USA Cycling, and he mentioned that he really believes that the best bike racers in the world want to race in the USA. You know, they love it here, and the fact that so many UCI points are on offer means that they have really good reason to travel here from Europe. So it's a perfect setup for them, and check out the awesome course that they get to race on too. So this is Kayla Davis, number 65 from Siniska Cycling, still at the front. She's doing a great job staying away. I think the fact that the descent there was a little technical and she was out of sight for some of the downhill section probably helped her maintain that gap. Let's see if anybody tries to bridge across, or if this is going to be another one that's brought back into the field.
Now the 22-year-old making the first move for this team here today.
It's pretty fun to be up there at the front, and all you see is the motos up there. They're like your own motos. It's quite motivating. So it doesn't really matter at that point where the peloton is. You just want to maintain a TT pace, a time trial pace, essentially. Not go too hard. You don't want to burn too many matches. You know, whether you get brought back or not, the rest of the race is still very long. But you also want to maintain a solid pace. Once that gap is opened up, all you have to do essentially is ride at the same speed as the peloton is riding at, and you'll maintain that gap. And if you can make it stretch open a little bit more, well, even better.
All right, so Kayla Davis at the frontier, still on the first lap at the Maryland Cycling Classic. Well, Lex, with a course like this and the type of field we have, when you consider the peloton and when they watch a break go up the road, what's the kind of time gap that they're comfortable with throughout the day? How big of a gap would they let a rider or a group get before they'd start to feel uncomfortable?
You know, Steve, it all depends on numbers and how many people are in a breakaway. So at this point in the race, so early on within the first lap, because a rider is solo, the pack is not going to be too stressed out until it gets maybe up to like several minutes. I'd say like maybe even over 5 minutes. But you can see now that there are some riders that are trying to bridge across here and join the rider off the front and work together. At that point, especially when there are riders from the same team within the breakaway who can work together, that might start making the peloton a little bit more nervous. And once the break gets up to over a minute or around 2 minutes, maybe more, then the team is, or the peloton is really going to start trying to think about how they might be able to bring them back. But early on in the race, there's definitely less pressure than later. The peloton riders are essentially spending quite a bit less energy just because of the draft effect than the riders out at front. So if you let a rider hang out there long enough, they're going to end up emptying the tank at some point.
So that is Chloe Patrick, number 61 there, coming up alongside Kaylee Hanel.
So this is pretty good for Siniska. This is excellent team strategies. There's nothing like having a couple of your own riders within the breakaway. And again, when we talk about numbers in the breakaway, it's not just the finite numbers, but it's also the ratio. So right now they have the majority of riders out there.
We continue from Baltimore, Maryland. This first ever women's edition of the Maryland Cycling Classic on a warm Saturday. Leaving the Inner Harbor and now headed back towards central Baltimore after going to the high point on the course, the Queen of the Mountains section. First of 4 laps of this women's race. The men will take to the roads later on today. This is the most significant single day of professional racing all year long in the U.S. The Maryland Cycling Classic has placed its signature on the sport, and Baltimore is a terrific host. This city has really come a long way over the last few years. The culture, the community, the socioeconomic level has evolved so much, and now
playing host to another tremendous sporting event in a city of great sports. You've got, of course, the Baltimore Ravens kicking off their NFL season tomorrow against the Buffalo Bills. You've got the Baltimore Orioles hosting the LA Dodgers just down the road at Camden Yards later on today, and the Maryland Cycling Classic kicking off the day here in the streets of the city of Baltimore. And now this is the action at the front end of the field. Patrick, Cannell, and Davis, the three riders who had tried to create a gap to the peloton, but it looks like they're being brought back in now, and just some small gaps, single file at the front, but no one has established a meaningful gap to the peloton as of yet, Lex.
Yeah, that's right. And we see the Siniska riders just telling each other to kind of cool down and calm down again, just because the pack is right there. If you attack time after time after time, that's the best way to empty your tank real quick and have nothing left for a little bit later on in the race when things start to get really critical. We see a counterattack here. EF Education, Oatly, lots of following. So the speed is picking up, and I think that they're doing this because now they're back in the downtown area of Baltimore, where the course is a little bit more technical. And the more technical it is, the tougher it is for riders to move up. So if you're on the front and you're able to string out the peloton, you can make sure that it's really tough for the riders out the back, and maybe even show some riders off the back. And, you know, the smaller the peloton is, the easier it is to get the win.
It's Taylor Tompkins there, number 141 in the red and dark blue there at the very back, and coming back in towards the inner harbor now, and something to look for at the end of every lap, and especially at the end of the race itself, with just about 2K left to go to that finish line. There's a couple of technical turns. You've got one of those turns here, and then with less than 1K to go, which is just over half a mile, you've got 3 90-degree corners that they have to deal with. And then it's a long, straight, flat run in from there to the finish of several hundred meters. So once you navigate those final 3 90-degree corners inside of the final K, it's straight and flat to the finish. And they're getting their first look at some of these technical corners right now as they're back down in the inner harbor and headed towards the end of lap number 1.
So essentially, most of these riders are taking this first time through the finish line kind of as a practice. They're getting the first opportunity to test the corners at race speed. They've probably studied the finish and ridden the last section of it a few times before the race, but I mean, the roads weren't shut down, and it's just not the same when you race it in traffic and follow all the rules of the road versus when you're racing it in a race setting. So those last corners and navigating them are going to be pretty crucial at the end of the race, and every lap they'll be practicing and figuring out, okay, this is the best line, or this is where I need to be in position.
And now they are coming to the end of lap number 1.
Also, there to make things happen and break every lap. We're going to have
All right, 1 lap down, 3 left to go as they just went through what will be the finish of the race later on. And now every time they come through for these final 3 laps, that finish line area where you saw the banner, and that'll be a section where they will sprint for points, just like they did at the Queen of the Mountains. There were no sprint points available at the end of this first lap, but every time through from now to the finish, they will be sprinting for points the rest of the way.
Yeah, we see those 2 riders that crashed earlier on, from the Milton team and the Font team behind their team cars. We had a shot of that earlier, so they're making their way back. And I'm excited for the next time that they come through this finish line, because, like, as I mentioned, this time that we just saw was essentially like a practice, and now we're going to have a mini finish every single time. So riders are going to be sprinting for those sprint points, and the speeds will be even higher. So now they're navigating through the cobbles. Actually, fun fact, Steve, in Baltimore, they call these cobbles Belgian blocks, which I thought was pretty cool. The course designer told me about that. So it's a term that they use in Baltimore.
A colorful semantic distinction, I guess.
Yes, exactly.
Right. But they're not just the typical pavers that you sometimes see in the U.S. that are smooth. I mean, these are legit cobbles like you would see in Europe from the 18th century. They're uneven. They're very difficult to navigate. It's bumpy. They've been chipped away over the years. So the cobbles here aren't that long, only about 500 meters, but when you go through them later on at higher speeds, you just never know what they might do to the bike, to the rider. If you're riding next to somebody, does it throw you offline? You just got to be attentive.
And there's a special technique to riding and navigating the cobbles too. You really have to keep a lot of pressure on the pedals, and even when you feel that the pressure isn't necessarily transferring and like driving you forward, you just can't give up, and you can't be, you have to be unrelenting. So the trick is stay on a big gear, push really hard, don't give up, and go straight as much as you can.
This is the heart of these cobbles right now.
So you can see the World Tour teams up there at the front. So EF Education, Oatly, and Canyon SRAM. These riders are a lot more used to riding the cobbles, especially in the Spring Classics over in Europe. They're not necessarily intimidated by them like some of the other riders who tend to race more in North America might be.
All right, so the riders just going through the cobbles, and while we have a moment, let's send you out onto the course for the third member of our crew, Rasan Bahati. Hey, Rasan.
And just like I thought, EF is on the front. EF Education is on the front, on the pave, causing gaps all through the peloton right now. This pave is really bad. Bottles are flying. Gaps are opening up. The riders are struggling to get themselves across the pave. Chains are dropping. They're looking for the fastest line through here. And as they rip their way through one of the most difficult sections here in Fells Point at the Maryland Cycling Classic. This is a good one, ladies and gentlemen.
Yeah, it's a lot different from when they were riding through just in the neutral zone. At speeds, those cobbles are really making some of those riders, especially at the back, suffer and struggle, and it really puts the different riding styles into perspective. So we really see those stronger riders with more experience on the cobbles up towards the front there.
So, Lex, they're on the second of the 4 laps now, and as they came through that start-finish area, there was a crash at the back of the peloton, our third of the day so far. And let's take you back now and show you exactly what happened. Right side of the screen. And 2 riders touching wheels.
Oh gosh, that's Emily Newsom who went down, and a rider from Canyon SRAM. That's too bad. Emily Newsom, she was the rider that was ahead of the peloton for a little while. If they're okay, these riders won't have too much trouble getting back to the pack. They're used to using their team cars to get back to a peloton after a mishap, but that's too bad that they went down. It's never fun to hit the pavement.
So 3 crashes in just over 1 lap already in this women's race. We have an American going off the front here, and this is lap 2 of 4. Lex, what do you think the riders will have learned from that first lap? The first time they've really seen it at race speed.
Yeah, they get to feel it in their legs, and they get an appreciation of where it's hard and where maybe they saw areas that they thought would be tough, but they might not actually be so tough. And they also have a bit of an appreciation as to where brakes might have a higher chance of succeeding if they go, and where a brake might have a higher chance of just being reeled right back in. If you attack right before a downhill, I mean, it's going to be tough to stay away, but if you attack before a technical section or before a really difficult steep uphill, then it's a better chance that you'll have to stay away and maintain that gap.
When it comes to launching some breakaways in a race like this, is there any conversation ahead of time amongst teammates or anyone in the peloton about going together? Or is it more just make a move, watch the reaction, and if you're in the peloton, just to react to what you see? How much strategy and pre-planning might go into it once the riders are out here on the road like this?
Steve, it's a little bit of a mix. So riders are definitely going to discuss during their team meeting before the race what the team strategy will be. But the thing is in cycling is that every single team has its own strategy. So maybe your strategy is going to get thrown out the window if it doesn't necessarily fit with what another team is doing, or if you have to react. But they'll talk about it before.
They are going through one of the oldest urban parks in the country, Patterson Park, and the feed zone will be coming up shortly.
Steve, you also notice that riders of the same team will be riding close together, so they'll be speaking between each other, and they also have race radios in their ears. So their team director, who's driving the car back in the caravan, is getting information from race radio, the riders on the motorcycles, about time gaps or who is in the breakaway, and then they'll also be able to instruct their teams and the riders on what strategies to execute and when. So it just provides them a little bit more information. And then the more you race, the more you just develop this instinct about when it is time to react, and you kind of develop this synergy with your teammates as well.
So Patterson Park, part of one of Baltimore's oldest neighborhoods, dates all the way back to the War of 1812. Actually became a crucial battleground.
There's a lot of history here.
Absolutely.
And we're making history today with the inaugural edition of the Women's Maryland Cycling Classic. There have been 3 editions for the men so far, and this is the first time that there's the women's race. It's an excellent thing for USA Cycling, and it's so awesome to see riders, top riders from all around the world. We have Olympians here, we have national champions here, and we have world record holders.
Well, as you see, one of the riders for the U.S. calling for some support here. That is Jamie Chapman.
Looks like she's got a flat tire here. So she's got her right hand up. If you get a rear flat, you usually put your right hand up in the air so that your support vehicle knows which wheel to jump out with. So that's the team mechanic there, Adrian Hederman.
Jamie Chapman, very poised, and this is kind of business as usual. It happens a lot, and the mechanics know what they're doing. They get out. It's a quick tire change. The rider doesn't panic, and really you don't lose all that much time if it's done right.
Yep, and it's actually a good experience to do a wheel change like this at this race, and for these riders. Her mechanic there, he's got a lot of experience working in the sport and working at international events and even the Women's Tour de France for many, many years. So they did that wheel change very smoothly. She's just going to ride nice and calmly back through the caravan. Kind of good timing through the feed zone, because typically things slow down a little bit because riders are focused on grabbing bottles if they need them. So she'll use the draft of the team cars, which is totally legal and allowed, to get back.
You see her getting right behind the car here, and that'll help.
Yep, sitting in the bumper there. And her team director who's driving, she's going to be looking back in the rear view mirror quite a bit just to make sure that the gap is the perfect distance, so she'll get a good draft.
All right, so Jamie Chapman just after a flat tire trying to work her way back to the peloton here on the second of 4 laps at the Maryland Cycling Classic.
So the pack's all back together here after the feed zone. A few people grab bottles. I heard that some strategy here that riders are using is to carry as little as possible, because they do have the feed zones, because they do have the capacity to go back to the race caravan and grab bottles and food. So there's not too much stress about carrying too much weight.
Now they just went through the feed zone at Patterson Park, and some picking up bottles. It is relatively warm. The high temperature later on today should take it up into the mid-80s, but that'll be more along the lines of what the men will have to deal with. For the women's race, high temperature should be right around 80 degrees, but still warm. It is humid in Baltimore. Early September, so you really haven't had the fall temperatures settle in yet. And they do get somewhat of a break, though. It was up to 90 yesterday with full sunshine, so it was very hot and humid. Slightly less so here today, but still warm for bike racing.
Yeah, you know, I think they lucked out with the conditions here. Like, temperatures in the 80s, that's pretty reasonable.
There are thunderstorms in the forecast for the men's race later on today. We could see some gusty winds, some hail. That's all forecast to roll in after 2 p.m., so we'll see what that does if it in fact materializes. But for the women, should be dry. It is sunny, it is warm, and here is now Jamie Chapman after the flat tire getting back onto the end of the main field. So no harm done. And she is back in the peloton with just inside of 50 miles left to race. And again, this is the second of 4 laps around an 18-mile course.
Jamie Chapman just rejoined the peloton. She had a flat, and she's smooth, calm, and collected there. And, you know, it's actually pretty nice when you have confidence in your team director who's driving the car, when you have confidence in the race mechanic who calmly changes your wheel out. You don't feel too stressed, especially at this point in the race. You try not to spend too much energy on anxiety. Just get right back into that draft and take your time getting back to the peloton. Whenever it's convenient, just jump right back in and get in the draft. But she did an excellent job there. You could tell that she wasn't too anxious about what was happening. Check out that backdrop. That's pretty cool.
Well, we've been discussing the Benin cycling team from West Africa, and now a little bit more about just how they made their way from Africa to here in Baltimore. First up to Brussels, Belgium, then transatlantic all the way past Baltimore, out west to Denver. So you land at DIA and then make your way up north to Wyoming, where they have supporters that hosted them for some training, just acclimation, then back down to Hayden, Colorado for more training, and then flying from Denver back to Baltimore. So over 10,000 miles of travel altogether from their home base in Africa to here in Baltimore, and then they're going to do it all again once this race is over. So that is a road trip and then some for one day of competition.
Yeah, and you know, the competition is the reason for the trip, and it also is just as exciting to do the travel in and of itself. I mean, my first trip to Africa was because of bike racing too, so I've been in their shoes in some way, shape, or form, and I can appreciate how cool it is to be able to travel for bike racing and race with people from all around the world who are essentially my peers.
And it's a unique opportunity. Again, the first ever race at this level for this Benin team. This is the biggest event they've ever taken part in, coming a long way, and a huge opportunity for them today in Baltimore, as we have an EF rider now off the front. And here on the second lap, maybe still a little early for things to get serious, but this seems like a pretty significant effort.
Yeah, that was an interesting spot to take a flyer there, right after a downhill and then into a couple of turns. She had a bit of a slight uphill there. We got a little bit of a chicane there as well, rougher pavement, and this is where the steep uphill pitches towards the second small section of cobbles, which some riders were saying seem kind of sketchy to ride on. So it's always great to attack before part of the course that riders might hesitate a little bit on, because then you have a better chance at creating a bigger gap if you're able to navigate those sections with confidence and you know that your bike handling skills give you an advantage.
Going past that Washington Monument, Henrietta Christie, a rider from New Zealand who was part of the Queen of the Mountains battle earlier, as she got 3 of the top places that awarded her points. So it looks like it's pretty clear that she's going for the Queen of the Mountains jersey here in this race.
The really cool thing about this team is that they have a lot of different options. So they have very strong riders that can do extremely well in the breakaway. And if ever it comes down to a bunch sprint, they also have an amazing group of riders that can work together to create a lead-out train for Allison Jackson, who is one of the world's top sprinters right now.
Any team that comes to a race like this, where there are diverse tactics, multiple options for victory and for competitions, it's good to have as many options as possible, because you just never know how the race is going to unfold. So you want to be prepared. You go in with the plan, what you want to target, but as things change out on the road, the team that can adapt the best and has the most options to respond usually does the best.
Absolutely. Being agile and able to change your course and adapt your plans, that's one of the key things that a cyclist and a team has to have to be successful in this sport.
So going around this technical corner, a little downhill here after passing that Washington Monument for the second time.
You'll notice that at the back, it kind of looks like the riders are going slower, and that's because you can only navigate these turns at a certain speed. And if the peloton has to slow down and bunch up at the front because they're navigating the corners, well, those at the back that are still in the speedy sections, they have to slow down anyways before they even hit that corner. And it's one of the reasons why it's a good strategy, usually, to stay up closer to the front on the technical sections. You'll save a lot of energy because you don't find yourself having to brake in those fast sections just to accommodate the front of the peloton, causing your area of the pack to bunch up.
Now this is the peloton now, and no serious chase going on. And that's always one of the interesting dynamics in an event like this, when you get a rider off the front, or a group for that matter, and it becomes apparent that they might get some substantial time. Then it's a question of who's going to chase. What team is going to come together as one and collectively take up the responsibility of pulling those riders back. And that's why some riders take the chance of getting in the break, hoping there's disorganization behind them and nobody pulls, because if that happens, then all of a sudden a rider like this maybe stays away.
Yeah, you got it, Steve. That's true. That's exactly how it happens. And there are going to be some teams that feel that they have absolutely no responsibility to bring back a rider on EF Education Oatly, because this is one of the bigger teams. It's a UCI Pro team, and they're going to be moving back up to UCI Women's World Tour status next year, I'd expect. So the eyes are going to be mostly on Saratazit and Canyon SRAM to bring a rider like this back. These are the other UCI World Tour teams out here at the Maryland Cycling Classic today. But they're not doing anything just yet because they don't see her as a threat at this point in the race, especially as a solo rider.
And for people that might be a casual fan and wonder, well, why doesn't everybody chase? What do you mean the responsibility of bringing a rider back? Why doesn't everybody throw in and try to reel those riders in? Well, it's all about what you have to stand to gain and what you have to stand to lose. Risk reward when it comes down to using energy at this point, right?
Absolutely. You know, 5 years ago, there were no Women's World Tour teams. There was just one classification of women's cycling teams. But now we have 3 different categories. We have the Women's World Tour, and there are 15 of these teams. We have the UCI Pro team level, and then we have the UCI teams and club teams. And so that's the 3rd tier. So the Women's World Tour teams, these are the ones with the most experience. These are the ones that are racing the hugest races on the calendar, day in and day out, essentially. And the teams that have a lower ranking in the UCI status know that these riders are stronger, and they're not going to try to go up against them and spend energy to help them bring riders back. They need to try to force these World Tour teams to spend as much energy as possible, because their tanks to begin with are already much bigger.
All right, so Henrietta Christie with a lead of just over half a minute on the main field and on the 2nd to 4 laps here at the Maryland Cycling Classic. Henrietta Christie, the native of Wellington, New Zealand, the 23-year-old who had quite a junior career. Also won the young rider classification at the Tour Cyclists Féminine in France 4 years ago. A national junior road national champion, as well as a TT champion. So she knows something about riding by herself out here and kind of time trialing at the front of a race.
She's looking strong out there. Look at the power output that she's putting down into those pedals. We don't see her power meter. We don't see the actual watt number, but you can just tell by the way that she's powering up this incline that she's feeling strong today. She shows her spot to tack quite well, too, I'd say.
And again, no real organized chase here. Once you see one team come to the front, you see all the same colors of those jerseys and the pace pick up, then you'll know that the chase is on. But right now, they feel they have her well in check, just over half a minute up the road.
Yeah, the teams are just monitoring. You have a lot of riders that are sitting up at the front or trying to get up at the front, just in case one team tries to send a rider out to bridge across. It's a great opportunity to just jump on a wheel and get not a free ride, but a ride that costs a lot less in terms of energy. But Christie's doing great out here right now.
Going uphill here, Henrietta Christie, 3rd different professional team that she has ridden for. 45 miles remaining. And 2nd time through this course that's 18 miles long. So she continues to roll along here on this sunny, warm Saturday in Baltimore, Maryland. Well, that's something that's kind of interesting. All of our attacks so far, with the exception of one brief one, have been solo moves. We haven't seen a group of any kind come together, haven't seen multiple riders get any kind of substantial gaps over the main field. Does that surprise you at this point, or is it just, again, still too early in a race like this?
At this point, we're not even halfway through the race just yet, so I'm not super surprised. But I'm also not super surprised that we are seeing the attacks. So that's a good thing. And eventually, I think what's going to happen is we're going to see people paying a little bit more attention to when these attacks are going and jumping on wheels and moving in small bunches that will work together and stay away. So a successful attack will have a group of riders with a proper composition. So we'll have riders from maybe Canyon SRAM, Stratazit, and EF Education, maybe a couple riders from other teams that are represented in the peloton. But if we have those top World Tour teams in the break, then that's something that might be able to stay away.
But riders from all different teams here at the very front. Just a steady tempo right now, keeping the gap to Christie within reason, but not letting it get too big. And sometimes this can be the ideal scenario because you know that the gap is very manageable. You know that the rider out front is not a long-term threat. So it kind of settles down the race and it decreases the stress to a degree, and you don't have riders wondering, all right, is the gap too big? Where's the next attack going to come from? It kind of settles everybody down and stabilizes the race, at least for a little while.
Yeah. You have to stay up closer to the front and monitor any counterattacks when a break like this gets pulled back a little bit. Or also, at this point, if somebody tries to bridge across, you have to be close enough to the front to be able to jump on their wheel and make it across and work together with them. But as a rider in the peloton right now, I'd probably be feeling pretty good about the fact that Henrietta Christie is out there because she's a strong rider and she just did the Tour de France Femme. She's an excellent domestique. So for her to be burning matches out there that she might not be able to use later on to support her team would be something that the other riders would be happy to see. But at the same time, they can't count her out. Like, if somebody else joins her up there to help her continue to power it forward, she could make it. See right now that she only has one bottle on her frame, so just because there's the feed zone here, because she has access to her team car, she doesn't have to carry two bottles. She's going to save all the weight that she can because essentially she's saving power, saving watts by not having to carry around an extra 500 milliliters of water.
There are different reasons a rider goes up the road like this. Sometimes it might be for a specific competition like a Queen of the Mountains. Sometimes it's to get in a break because you might think it stays away eventually all the way to the finish. Sometimes it's to set up a teammate later on. There are so many different reasons breaks form and why certain riders go at certain times in a race, but something that riders don't often know is who's going to come with them and who's not going to come. Sometimes you get in a break hoping that other riders are going to join you, and then they don't, and you're kind of left dangling.
Yeah, that's always a happy moment when you get a few riders that you know are strong riders that want the break to succeed, and they jump across and join you. Other times you'll have riders that are marking you if you're a threat, and if somebody jumps across, they just want to sit on your wheel and wait until you tire yourself out, and then they'll counterattack and you'll have given them a free ride. So Steve, you're right. There are many different reasons that people attack and create those breaks. And like right now we can see the peloton's not suffering too much, so it's not that the peloton can't ride as fast as Henrietta Christie, it's just that this is how strategy in bike racing works.
Lex, do you think that now that we're on the second of the 4 laps and we're approaching the midpoint of the race, that the riders, the teams, and their directors back in the team cars will have made a decision that later on, all things being equal and nothing dramatic has changed in the race, do you think they will have made a decision as to where the decisive moments are going to be on the final lap, where they might want to attack, where they might want to make the difference in this race? Will those decisions have been made by this point, or are they still calculating?
So I think that the team strategy was already established before the race happened, just the general team strategy, like when the teams wanted to attack, where they thought the breaks would go. So that probably won't change too much. I mean, if it does, then the director will tell the riders through the race radios from the car. But this is going to be mostly up to the riders, I would say, because they're the ones that are really feeling the course in their legs and witnessing what it feels like in the peloton when a breakaway goes away or when they themselves are on the attack. So it's the riders who are going to know exactly where and when the attacks should take place, if ever those weren't clearly defined in the race meetings.
All right, so heading up to the Queen of the Mountains point, the signature climb on the circuit here for the second time. Again, it's about 900 meters. And there's one section where it gets almost to 8%, but the average is 7%, just about half a mile in total. Not a major climb, but it's one that they will definitely feel in the legs.
Yeah, and if they do go hard on this climb, just because there is that turn at the very top with the fast downhill, anybody who wasn't quite on the back as they crest the hill, I mean, they're going to be gapped off. So it's not a really tough hill, but you still got to be careful about your positioning, especially if the other riders decide that they're going to go hard or there's going to be a solid battle for the Queen of the Mountains points.
Christie was one of the 3 riders who got points the first time up the climb, so she is hoping for the maximum of 4 points for being the first up to the top the second time through, and put her firmly in position to contend for the Queen of the Mountains jersey at the end of the race.
Then it would be interesting to see how the sprint for second and third, and the rest of the Queen of the Mountains points will go from the peloton. So let's see how this plays out here. So they're just approaching the summit. Looks like the gap is closing a bit, but I think Henrietta's going to stay away. 200 meters to go before she crosses the Queen of the Mountains line.
So the gap at its highest point was just over half a minute for Christie. We'll see it as we get a better benchmark at the top of the climb. Well, this is some of the damage it's doing to the field, kind of starting to spread out here as they are onto the climb.
It's going to be tougher for her to stay away once the downhill starts, just because the peloton has such a good impetus, and the draft effect is so much more significant, especially at those downhill speeds. But let's see. She might be able to surprise us.
That's the top of the climb there. Kind of a false flat here before she hits that traffic light up there, makes the turn, and then she'll start going back downhill. But judging from the overhead shot, it looks like the margin for her is still somewhat decent.
You're right, Steve. She did open up a pretty solid gap. Now, what's important here when the rider is cresting the hill like this and just hitting the downhill section is to give a good little punch to get up to speed as quickly as possible and not just let gravity slowly but surely bring the momentum up. So she's putting out a good amount of power here to get her speed up quickly.
So Christie gets the maximum points at the Queen of the Mountains section, so she gets 4 points. So still 2 slots available. 2 points for the next rider who hits the top of the climb, and 1 point for the rider after that. The points go 3 places deep for the Queen of the Mountains.
So the peloton's stringing out here, and I saw Henrietta's teammate Allison Jackson with a pain face there as she was working really hard to stay with the front riders, who must be putting down a pretty solid pace to cross the Queen of the Mountains line. And you do see the gaps opening up here, so let's see what happens. See representation from all of the top teams.
All right, so the field now going through, making that turn. We'll get the standings of the Queen of the Mountains as we roll along here. But how about this? The gap for Christie now up over a minute.
So Henrietta Christie is maintaining her gap after the Queen of the Mountains sprint, and the peloton has kind of shattered. It's split. So there's a small group now that's chasing, or relatively small if we're comparing it to the size of the full peloton. So the second time up, the Queen of the Mountains climb actually did some damage, it looks like.
Now this is the largest gap any rider has had so far in this race, north of a minute. Christie leading the Queen of the Mountains competition now, leading the race overall. Pretty healthy margin back to the field, and now the field at the front fracturing somewhat. So this is, to this point, the most significant development that we've seen in the event today.
Yeah, I think this time up the Queen of the Mountains climb definitely did some permanent damage. We'll have to see as the lap progresses, but that was a pretty solid split, and the riders were quite strung out in a line, so that's a sign that they're working real hard and the pace is very high. But Henrietta is looking very strong here.
Not only good for her, but good for the EF squad overall.
Absolutely. Their ambitions are nothing short of coming home with a victory for this race. And Henrietta was one of the riders that they had slotted to go for the breakaways. I'm sure that she was hoping or expecting that maybe somebody else would come with her, but she has a lot of confidence coming off of such a successful season and racing at the Tour de France Femmes. And she's showing that she's very strong and capable right now, maintaining that gap of 1 minute.
All right, so Henrietta Christie, leader of the Queen of the Mountains and leader of the race, headed back towards the Inner Harbor on lap number 2. And look at this action now at the front of the field. Things are really starting to get aggressive. With the gap at a minute, you have other teams now with riders trying to create some separation. EF in those pink jerseys, they're a part of this here, and everyone making the effort, looking around, seeing who's there. This is a very uncertain time in the race, but also a critical moment too.
Yeah, and we see veteran Tiffany Cromwell right up there at the front. She's an extremely experienced and strong bike racer, and you can tell that there's a sense of urgency in the way that she's riding. So EF right now is just staying on the wheels of Canyon SRAM. They don't want to contribute whatsoever to helping bring back Henrietta Christie, but you can see that Canyon SRAM has spotted her as a dangerous threat, and they're working real hard to close that gap. They want to be part of this break. EF just gets to sit on their wheels and get a free ride up to Henrietta, who is their teammate.
All right, so Henrietta Christie winning the second Queen of the Mountains competition.
Melissa Rollins.
Yeah, Rollins. And then Quinn taking the next 2 spots. So Henrietta Christie in the points each of the first 2 times up the Queen of the Mountain climb. So she leads by 4 with 2 more times left to go. 2 more climbs left in this women's race, coming back downhill towards the end of the second lap, which will mark the midpoints for the women's event. And this is a very fast drag back towards the Inner Harbor. Again, the start and the finish were about a half mile apart earlier, but now the end of each lap takes us to what will be the finish of the race later on. This is where they are right now. And that is the gap from the peloton to the leader, L to P. Just over a minute right now is the margin. And it's all fast and downhill back to where they get to the Inner Harbor. A few technical corners in the last 2K before they come to the end of lap number 2.
Steve, I'm impressed. Like, maintaining a gap at speeds like that on a downhill when you have other riders who are urgently chasing and trying to reel you back in is very impressive. This definitely shows just how strong Henrietta is.
Well, what a great spot for EF, though, because she's in a terrific position for Queen of the Mountains. She's in the break for the overall tapestry of the race itself and how the dynamics are going to work. She's got a strong team behind her. So, as they say in the cycling lexicon, they have a lot of cards to play at the moment.
Well put, Steve. You said it. That's exactly right. And she's also forcing the other teams, the top threats, to spend energy while her teammates sit on and just essentially get a free ride.
That being said, at the front of that field, there were a lot of EF riders who were putting in quite the effort to be at the front and to maybe work to splinter the field. They do have that ability to get the free ride, but you also have the part of the equation where, hey, they want to hurt other riders, right? If they want to distance other riders, they put in an effort, create a gap, and all of a sudden it reduces your competition long term.
Yeah, absolutely. And you could see that they knew that this was an important and crucial moment in the race, because when they saw the Canyon SRAM riders reacting, they were right on. And Canyon SRAM, they put in a solid effort, because those EF riders, you could tell in the looks on their face that they weren't just soft pedaling to stay on the wheels. So there was a pretty solid effort there made right after the Queen of the Mountains sprint line.
Lex, I know it's only the first ever edition of this women's race at the Maryland Cycling Classic, but how would you compare it in terms of prestige, the course, the way it's all set up to some of the other big women's races they do throughout the year?
This race, if you've been following cycling for a while, then you know the Philly Cycling Classic. This was like one of the hugest races in North America. That was actually one of my favorite races. No, it wasn't my favorite race. And unfortunately, it went away. But Maryland Cycling Classic, this is, to me, it's almost like a replacement for Philly. This is a race that's similar to the spring classics over in Europe, all the ones that we know about, like, Paris-Roubaix. We don't have quite as many cobbles, but there are a lot of features in different sections, technical aspects, and different requirements that this course demands from the riders that are kind of similar to the spring classics. So I'd say that this is right up there, and it has a UCI ranking of a 1.1 race. So this is almost the top level. It's just one slot lower. So I mean, this is up amongst the top races in the world.
Now the gap has come down pretty significantly, close to 40 seconds. It was over a minute at one point. So, Christy, the interesting thing, Alex, is that she's using a lot of energy out here, right, by herself. And you wonder, she's obviously got the Queen of the Mountains in her mind. She's leading that category. Is she going to have it in her legs for the final 2 times up the climb to still be in contention, or will this solo effort take so much out of her that she's going to relinquish that lead later on in the race?
Well, Steve, we see her looking over her shoulder, so that tells me that she's probably hearing in her race radio that she should probably let up a little bit. So the team director in the car is probably telling Henrietta, okay, you've done your thing here, just let off a little bit. We've split the peloton up. We've shelled some riders out the back. Now you can save some energy, get back in with your teammates, and you're in good standings for the Queen of the Mountains ranking. Come back in, save your legs, and then go back again for the Queen of the Mountains points. Because essentially there's no reason for her to stay out there all by herself right now if that is her intent to win the Queen of the Mountains classification. She may as well save her energy before she gets to that line.
If she does come all the way back here shortly, no doubt we will see some counterattacks. This is the second of 4 laps, but we're coming towards the end of it here. This will mark the midpoint of the race when they come back through that finish line area with the banner, headed towards the Inner Harbor, the downtown backdrop of central Baltimore there in the distance.
And this, Steve, is going to be the first time that we see the riders going for sprint points. So let's see what happens here. If Henrietta does stay off the front, then she's going to be picking up full points. But then there's still points that are going to be left over for second and third place. So I'm curious to see what the dynamic is going to be and who is going to be going for those sprint points.
We did not have an intermediate sprint at the end of the first lap. We will have one at the end of the remaining laps, though. The second, third, and at the finish. And the points are the same as they are for the Queen of the Mountains. 4 for first, 2 for second, 1 for third. So the sprint jersey competition will begin really for the first time here shortly.
Yeah, it's going to be like a little taste of what to expect for the finish of the race, and riders are going to have the experience of navigating those final turns at a pace that's going to be a little bit more similar probably to the race finish pace, because people are going to be sprinting for that very same line that will be the finish line at the end of the 4th lap.
A reminder, right around 2K from the finish, there's a couple of 90-degree corners. Then inside the final K, which is just over a half a mile to go from the end, you have 3 90-degree corners, and those come in succession. Still pretty far out from the finish. You have over 500 meters of flat, straight road before you get to the finish line. It's wide, and there's plenty of opportunity for the sprinters to really ramp up the speed and the intensity.
So the moto there is just showing Henrietta how much of a gap she has. That's always fun. When you get your private information from your private moto, it feels like when you're up there. It's like a VIP experience.
Well, it's funny. In a world of AI now, we're still using a whiteboard to communicate in a competition like this. It's very old school, but it's very historic. It feels like, you know, you're still part of the grassroots of the competition.
I love it. I'm also the kind of person that still uses a paper calendar, so I kind of like these old school things. But you're right, Steve. It is very classic, and it's still a special thing, and hopefully it stays a special thing for many years.
So wait a minute. You have a paper calendar on the wall at home?
Yes, I do.
You flip up every month and go one by one?
Absolutely. Yes, I do.
Do you cross out the days as they go by, Lex?
I don't cross out the days. That makes the calendar look a little bit too busy. I like to keep it clean.
I like that, though. I didn't know they still sold that many paper calendars.
They give them out for free, I think. They're not worth that much. I get it for free at my local pharmacy.
All right, so now back in towards the Inner Harbor area, central Baltimore, and they'll start navigating some of these corners. But you see just how wide the roads are.
Super wide, but you also see that the pavement's kind of wavy. There are manholes, a few potholes. So again, this is a pavement with character. So you still have to be careful about how you navigate. You want to take the fastest, shortest line, but you also don't want to hit anything too rough.
Yeah, the worst part is when you have tight technical corners and it kind of bottles up in a big field. You're not going to have that here. You have the technical 90-degree corners, but it's wide. Everybody can get through there. And especially when you're by yourself, there's no problem at all. And now she is on that straight and flat road that will lead her to the end of this second lap. And her margin has come down to 20 seconds over the chaser.
Look at all that support she's got from the motos. That's like a dream come true. That is so cool. So she's reaching back, get a little bit of nutrition. In a race like this, it's important to constantly eat and drink. So she's not going too hard. She knows that the peloton is coming up behind her. She's just going to want to jump right back in, get in the draft, and recover a bit.
So this will mark the midpoint of the women's race. 2 laps down, 2 left to go here at the inaugural Maryland Cycling Classic for the women. Henrietta Christie in front, one chaser, and then the field here with 2 laps remaining.
And now here comes the German-based team. This is it. They are making the move. That's number 43, Frankie.
So we have Denny Kengeveld, who just powered across the finish line. She got second place intermediate sprint points as she's chasing after Henrietta Christie, who's still maintaining her gap.
So one more sprint point available. It is just 1 point for the third rider across here. And at this moment, no one really sprinting for it. The field kind of spread out. This is the 2 leaders, and now the field going through there. So not a lot to sprint for with only 1 point, but at this stage of the race, again, at the halfway moment, you have Henrietta Christie, who's leading the Queen of the Mountains and the intermediate sprint competition, as well as the race itself. So she's 3 for 3, at least for now.
Yeah, so she's 35 seconds ahead of the peloton, and we're not seeing that gap come down anymore. So I'm kind of wondering if her team director has notified her that Denny Hengeveld is coming across and suggesting that they work together. So Hengeveld is an extremely strong rider too, and if they decide to collaborate, they could maintain a gap. So Christie right now, she has 35 seconds over the peloton, and there's 25 seconds between Denny Kengeveld and Christie.
Hengeveld, the Dutch rider, just 22 years of age, comes from a track background, a national champion in multiple disciplines, the points race, the individual pursuit, and she is in an individual pursuit moment right here, chasing one rider who's just a few seconds ahead of her at the front of the race. And there is the leader, Christie, now for the EF squad. Now, again, we have not had multiple riders at the front of the race in a break yet. We had a brief moment back on the first lap where 3 riders came together, but it lasted really just a few seconds before the field swallowed them up. We've had several different solo riders go clear, but it looks like for the first time we might have multiple riders with somewhat of a decent gap to the rest of the peloton. All right, top of the screen is the leader, Christy. Hengeveld is the bottom of the screen. Those are the first two riders on the road, and now coming up to what will be the cobbled section that begins each of the 4 laps.
Looks like Hengeveld is closing that gap, and I bet that Christy will be very happy to be able to work together with her. So Henrietta Christie's probably letting off the pedals just a little bit. So now there's only 5 seconds between the riders, but Henrietta Christie is still 35 seconds ahead of the peloton. So she has maintained the distance between herself and the peloton, but Hengeveld is getting closer and closer. This is exciting.
So, and it's going to be 2 riders at the front shortly. Christy and Hengeveld about to join forces here as we move into the second half of the Maryland Cycling Classic. The Maryland Cycling Classic is presented by Visit Baltimore, proud host of America's biggest professional bike race. Baltimore, you won't get it till you get here. Kaiser Permanente, official healthcare sponsor. We believe that good health begins with healthy communities. We're promoting healthy lifestyles to help Maryland thrive. And by the state of Maryland, from the sandy beaches of the Eastern Shore to the mountains of the West and everywhere in between. Maryland is home to spectacular natural beauty.
For inviting you to explore here, there, and everywhere. For giving your sense of adventure the attention it deserves, you're welcome.
And you're welcome to come see all that Maryland has to offer. This is Governor Wes Moore inviting you to come explore and experience Maryland's byways.
Parkinson's is more than a tremor. It touches every part of life, affecting movement, mood, cognition, and daily activities. At the Davis Phinney Foundation, we help people with Parkinson's by providing proven programs, resources, and ongoing support that improves quality of life. Our community shares experiences, celebrates victories, and faces challenges together. We offer practical tools that make a real difference. Visit dpf.org/Parkinson's. Follow us on social media and discover how to live well today.
The work and life of Thurgood Marshall literally changed this country.
Legally speaking, he's one of the founding fathers.
Whatever was going on, people said, don't worry, Thurgood's coming.
Thurgood's coming. Thurgood is coming.
He understood how to use the power of his voice.
He's the only Supreme Court justice who was more famous for what he did before rising to justice.
MPT is proud to present our 6th annual HBCU Week. Join us as we celebrate historically Black colleges and universities and the premiere of Becoming Thurgood, America's Social Architect.
It was like he had dropped from heaven.
Whatever was going on, people said, don't worry, Thurgood's coming.
Hear the undertold stories of sacrifice, courage, and hope. It all begins Monday, September 8th, only on MPT.
Just south of 70 miles remaining altogether as we look at the back of the field.
You can tell that they're working harder than they were on the first laps. So things are getting a little bit more serious. There's somewhat of a dangerous break off of the front. And riders are realizing that, if they let this go, they only have so much time in the race where they could bring this back. And the riders who are there are pretty strong. So we have Henrietta Christie from EF and Danique Hengeveld from Sertizet. This isn't their first rodeo, and they're very strong. So let's see what happens here.
If you're the field, one thing you have going for you is the fact that Christie has been working really hard. Most of the time out front by herself on the 2 climbs. Now finally getting some help from Hengeveld, who has bridged up here in the last several minutes. And this was the moment that she bridged across. She came from the main field and was just behind her as they completed the second lap. And then finally made the catch here. And for Christie, probably relieved to have some support here because now they can work together to a degree. And Hengeveld going to the front, and Christie finally gets a breather. She could sit on and draft for a little while.
Christie was probably hearing that Hengeveld was on her way up through the race radio. Her team director was probably giving her that information. You could see her looking over her shoulder. When something like that happens, you want to slow down just enough so that you can create that connection as fast as possible, but you also don't want to scrub too much momentum that you have to pick back up. So I'm surprised to see Siniska on the front because I'd say that this is Canyon SRAM's responsibility to bring this back. They're one of the strongest teams in the field. Tiffany Cromwell, she was just on the front. Oh, now we're seeing an attack. This looks like it's either Lauren Stevens or one of her teammates. And then somebody else bridging across.
One of the Fount riders in the green behind. And it looks like 3 riders from the Fount team are in chase. An EF rider in the pink kind of marking that move.
So we're also going through the feed zone. Some riders are focusing on getting team bottles nice and safely. We see the soigneurs right there holding out the water bottles. If you can stay out of that mess and you don't need any bottles, that's a good thing because sometimes they just go flying. They're all over the road. So it's a nice thing to be able to ride all the way over to the other side of the road.
Well, it's an interesting part of the calculus here with some riders kind of going off the front here, others deciding to take on the feed bags and the drinks. Do you mark the move? Do you get the food? What do you do in a situation like this?
Yeah. Typically, it's pretty looked down upon to attack in the feed zone, but you can maintain a pace if you put down just a solid, consistent pace. It's part of the unwritten rules that are accepted, I would say. So, but it is a difficult situation.
Don't mess with the lunch break. That's the rule, right? Don't mess with lunch.
Exactly.
Now this is back to the front. Christie and Hengeveld here. Their gap was just inside of a minute a short time ago.
So they're also making sure to take in some nutrition here. They're not panicking. They know that they have the gap. All that they have to do is maintain this gap. As long as they work together and ride essentially at the same speed as the peloton, then they're going to stay away. So let's see how long they just keep this comfortable, strong pace for, and then if something else will play out, and if they want to pick it up and increase that gap. But for now, they're looking pretty safe.
How dangerous are 2 riders at this point in the event?
At this point, if 2 riders are working very strongly together and there's not a lot of cohesion within the peloton, then they're a threat.
All right, so Christie and Hengeveld, the leaders on the third of 4 laps here, coming up on the final 30 miles altogether in Baltimore.
So Henrietta Christie right now, she's in the draft of Danique Hengeveld, who had bridged up to her break just earlier. They're working quite well together. One advantage of being in such a small little group, just essentially a duo, is that you can pick whatever lines you want to on these roads. And as I mentioned earlier in the broadcast a couple of times, this asphalt definitely has some character, as I like to put it. So there's cracks, there are potholes. We obviously have the cobble sections too. And when you can choose whatever line you want and you can see which obstacles are coming up in front of you, well, it's kind of comforting, and you can ride safely and ride at speed where you want to go.
Taking turns here, but it's a situation as well where Christie was out front by herself for so long that she will obviously want Hengeveld to do as much work as possible. But the key is that the more they share the load as much as they can, the better off their chances are. But sometimes one rider just can't take as long or as deep of a pull as another. No 2 riders equal at this point in the race, so you just hope that you strike that balance, right? Hengeveld a little fresher, wasn't out there as long as Christie, and remember, Henrietta Christie has also been in the battle for the Queen of the Mountains competition, so she's done more work than anybody in the field so far today.
So this is live.
Other riders coming through the end of the lap.
Yeah, so these riders are off the back. This shows just how hard this race has actually been. Like, we see the riders from the top team right now. So.
These are the two leaders. Henrietta Christie in the pink and Danique Hengeveld in the blue behind her. And the gap down to 20 seconds now to the field behind. So the margin is still starting to whittle away. So we should be able to see the field pretty shortly behind them. And at this rate, the advantage goes over to the field. It looks like they're making inroads here into bringing these two back.
It's going to be interesting to see what happens as they get closer towards the Queen of the Mountains when the draft effect kind of dwindles. I mean, I don't know if they're going to get caught before then, but they're still, you can tell that they're determined. They're still working hard together, but they must be getting tired, especially Henrietta Christie, who's been out there for so long, and she was out there alone for so long too. She's been spending a lot of matches, but at the same time, her teammates have been able to sit in the pack, saving all of their energy while the other teams have had to chase or stay on alert. This is a great situation for EF education to be in.
It'll be interesting how much energy Christie has for the final two times up the decisive climb that currently has her in the lead for the Queen of the Mountains competition. Can she sustain it? Can she maintain her lead? It's a gap of 4 points right now. And if these two can stay away to the top of the climb, she'll get more points because the points go 3 places deep, 4, 2, and 1 for the first 3. Right now they're coming up to the Washington Monument and Monument Park. Kind of slightly going uphill, but not as steep of a climb as they will face in just a little while.
Yeah, it's actually a good little pitch, and it's a good little pitch that goes right into the cobbled section, and it's not easy to go uphill on cobbles either, but they're navigating this very, very well. And it looks like the gap has increased again to 30 seconds.
Well, for Christie, she's looking for an opportunity to basically put the Queen of the Mountains competition to bed. After they go up the climb on this lap, it'll only be one more to go. That means it's a maximum of 4 points for anybody else who would win that final Queen of the Mountains climb. She's been in the points the first 2 times up the climb.
Exactly. If she gets maximum points, so if she's the first over the Queen of the Mountains line, then she's got the jersey in the bag, which is awesome. No matter what happens for the final ascent, she'll have it. So let's see if she's able to cross the Queen of the Mountains line first, if she's motivated for that too.
And that might be her job. If she can seal that up on the 3rd lap, then she can slide back and help her teammates with the ambition of potentially winning the race going into the final lap.
Exactly. She might also be told just to stay out there as long as she can. I don't know if she's spent so much energy that she'd be a strong enough asset at that point to be up there at the very, very end in a sprint lead-out train. So she might actually have the best chances of success for her team maintaining that gap and forcing the other teams to work. So we'll see what the team strategy is.